Hello and welcome to another video here on AV Forums. I'm Phil Hinton, the site editor, and in this video we're reviewing the 65-inch LG G2 OLED Evo TV. This is our initial review of the G2, but we will continue to assess the performance and test it over the next 12 months. The G2 range includes 55, 65, 77, 83 and a massive 97-inch screen size, with the highlight being this newly designed OLED Evo panel. It features new materials and Brightness Boost Pro processing from the Alpha 9 Gen 5 AI processor. The G2 is the brightest OLED TV that LG Electronics has yet sold in the UK, and it achieves this by using a brand new redesigned OLED Evo panel. We measured peak brightness in the most accurate filmmaker mode to D65 white on an industry standard 10% window, and the G2 measured a peak of 911 nits and full field was 163 nits on a 100% window. We ran these measurements a number of times, and these were the average results, with peaks up to 950 nits at 10% and 170 nits at 100% on some of the measured runs. You wouldn't see a difference between 50 to 100 nits peak brightness because of how our eyes work, so don't read too much into results that vary by small margins. With HDR, dynamic range matters, but so does just above black and mid-tone levels within the image, as these are where our eyes notice change more, and it's here that gives the HDR image its depth and realism. The G2 offers a superb HDR performance as a result of this. Colour gamut coverage to DCI-P3 within BT 2020 is also excellent, with superb saturation tracking. We measured BT 2020 coverage at 73% XY and 78% UV, with P3 coverage coming in at 97% XY and 99% UV. The only issue that we did note with the G2 was a slight saturation washout of colours at high brightness levels, but this is something that will not be noticed by all viewers and is more noticeable in comparison than it is in isolation. For the best and most accurate HDR performance, you want to switch the dynamic tone mapping off. However, the new system, which uses over 5,000 points of reference to determine how the tone mapping will be applied, is very good. It's just not totally accurate, so the choice of using it is up to you. Before we get into the image quality of the G2, if you like and enjoy our videos and want to see more of them, then why not support our channel by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. You can also support us via Patreon, and the details of this are in the video description. Thank you very much for your support. As you would expect from a top-of-the-line OLED TV, Hdr content is superb and incredibly accurate out of the box. Using the filmmaker mode, the G2 is incredibly accurate for grayscale, gamma and colour towards the Rec 709 colour gamut. With calibration, we got absolute reference level accuracy from the G2 with a manual and Calman AutoCal calibration. Grayscale and Rec 709 colour results have delta E errors well under the visible threshold of 3, with an average error of 0.5. So overall, the G2 is incredibly accurate for those who want to see content as it was mastered and intended to be seen. Panel uniformity is also very good, with no obvious banding on a 5% black slide and a clean look at 50 and 100%. One thing that is noticeable though at 100% brightness, and what some viewers may see, is a slight pink or magenta tint to the edges of the panel. It's not something that's overly noticeable when watching content, but if you're sat to one side and the scene within the film has a snowy landscape or similar, you may notice that the sides of the panel are a pinky hue. I personally do not find this a deal breaker, but it's something to bear in mind. Video processing is excellent, with the new Alpha 9 Gen 5 processor managing to upscale SD and HD images without any real issues to the native resolution of the panel. SD content does look a little soft, as you would expect, but HD sources do look incredibly clean with no obvious ringing to edges or artifacts. Lines are crisp and detailed, with excellent detail retrieval seen within the image. Motion is also excellent, with good 5.5 pull down with 24 frames per second Blu-ray and 4K content, with no induced judder noticeable and no issues with excessive motion blur. SDR content looks superb on the G2 with excellent image accuracy. Colours look natural and skin tones are lifelike as a result. Film content looks cinematic and detailed with superb image depth and solid blacks. Shadow detail retrieval is also superb. Even with streamed HD content, there's no obvious signs of blockiness or flashing in the darkest parts of the image. Fade from and to black is also excellent for an OLED TV. The G2 does take a small step forward when you compare it to last year's G1 models, with a slightly better SDR image in most respects, but this would probably only be noticeable in a comparison. HDR content is where the G2 really adds some distance between last year's G1 model, with noticeable brightness boost with most HDR content, which is not necessarily all about the peak brightness. The extra dynamic range available has other subtle effects that make HDR10 and HLG images pop with excellent mid-tone brightness and detail retrieval, adding to more detail within the darker reaches of the image, and this in turn makes images appear more natural, detailed and with added depth. Adding a more restrained ABL or automatic brightness limiter and a brighter overall image tops off a superb HDR performance that is noticeably improved from LG this year. This was with Dynamic Tone Mapping Pro switched off. When it's activated, the image is again bright and detailed, but I was aware of more image brightness fluctuations between dark and bright scene cuts, and the colour brightness was noticeably more muted, which points to over brightening of the colours that's not capable within WRGB panel. If you want accuracy, I would suggest that you leave this switched off. The G2 should also appeal to gamers with 4 full-fat HDMI 2.1 inputs and support for 4K 120Hz. There's also variable refresh rate VRR, NVIDIA G-Sync and AMG FreeSync, and of course you also have ALLM, which is automatic low latency mode. Plus, there is the Game Optimizer menu, which features a bar which you can pop up on screen, and that gives you complete control over your gaming experience. Input lag measured in at 12.9 milliseconds with 4K 60 and 9.2 milliseconds when using the input delay boost option. The G2 is an excellent option for gamers. The Smart TV system is the now familiar WebOS, and from this year onwards, the version running on the TVs will feature the year in the release. So on this G2, this is WebOS 22. It's almost identical to last year with a full screen homepage and various tile layers for video on demand services and the apps. It's slick and powerful, and everything works as you would expect it to, with minimal fuss. Image quality via the apps is also excellent, with full menu controls available for image settings. As I mentioned in our first look video, the G2 is the Gallery Series TV, and it's designed to be wall mounted. It comes with the recessed wall mount that attaches to the top of the rear panel, and there's also cable management built into the rear of the panel that moves cables from the source inputs to the bottom of the screen. From there, they can then be routed down the wall or inside the rear of the optional stand. The optional stand is a new design for this year and is now centrally mounted and has a 4-degree lean back. The stand can also swivel from side to side, which I suppose is good if there's quite a few of you in the room and you want to sit off to the sides. Some of you may be put off with the slight lean back on the stand, but I have to say, after watching the TV from my usual viewing distance, I was completely unaware of the lean back after a few minutes of viewing. It certainly wasn't an issue in my opinion. The overall design of the G2 is good, with excellent build quality, and as it uses a new composite fibre material in its construction, it also weighs a lot less than last year's G1 model. The black plastic remote control is certainly functional and it sits neatly in the hand. But the lack of a backlight and the fact that it's black plastic and doesn't quite fit with the design ethos of this G2, we would encourage LG to look at providing a slightly better designed remote for its high-end Gallery Series TVs in the future. The G2 will compete with the Sony A95K and the Samsung S95B QD OLED TVs, and of course the Panasonic and Philips flagships when they arrive later in the year. We won't know just how well the G2 ultimately stacks up until we do some more in-depth testing and comparisons with all of those sets, which we will do in the coming months and weeks ahead. But as things stand, the G2 is the best OLED TV yet from LG, and of course it comes highly recommended. But will this be the AV Forums TV of 2022? You'll have to stay tuned to find out. If you want to find out what forum members think after they purchase the LG G2, then of course you can also visit the LG forum at AV Forums. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for watching, and of course come back soon for more TV review videos.